Hey there, and welcome back to the Complicated Kids podcast. I'm your host, Gabrielle Nicolay. I am a toddler whisperer, a speech therapist, and a parent coach. And today I'm joined by Jessica. I forgot to ask you how to pronounce your last name.
Patay. Patay.
Jessica Patay. Jessica, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Gabrielle.
I am so glad that you're here because today we are going to shine a spotlight on the hidden work of caregivers, the hidden experience of mom caregivers, particularly in the case of moms who have children with special needs. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
And so tell us a little bit about yourself, how you came to this mission, because I think it is a mission for you. And tell us about yourself.
Thank you so much. So I am based in Los Angeles. I've been married to my husband for 27 years. We have 3 kids, ages 23, almost 21, and 18, 2 boys and a girl. And I say that my second son, Ryan, made me a caregiver. He was diagnosed at 5 weeks of age with a rare genetic disorder called Prader-Willi Syndrome. If you haven't heard of it, I am not offended. I've heard that from everyone. Oh, I don't think I've heard of that. And that's okay. So because of everything that I've experienced as a mom to Ryan and just motherhood, I think in general, I knew that I wanted to talk about it. I am a lover of words. I started writing about it. I started blogging about it back when that was a thing. And there were so many steps that brought me to this place today. But I say that, it is because of Ryan that We Are Brave Together. It is because of Ryan that we are now offering a book as well about
And I'm
caregiving.
so excited to talk about this book. So the book is called We Are Brave Together. Nope. The book is called
Becoming Brave Together, Heroic, Extraordinary Caregiving Stories from Mothers Hidden in Plain Sight.
And I love the subtitle. And why do you say they're hidden in plain sight? Why are you saying that?
Because mothers are isolated when you have a child with medical complexity, developmental disability, genetic disorders, really a lot of diagnoses and rare diagnoses. You are living a more isolated life. You are at home, you're at appointments, you're at therapies, you're at specialist appointments, you're in meetings, you're very much in this isolated world of caregiving, all that I mentioned above. And people don't often realize what our journey is like. And there's so many things that excite me about this book. But when you are somebody who has a friend who has a child with a disability and you just know that friend's story or a family member's story, it can be easy to minimize the extreme caregiving that is involved, the vigilance, the exhaustion. And this book is going to share 22 stories. And so I think it will help friends and family and the world at large understand what our experience is like. And the whole reason I created We Are Brave Together, which is our nonprofit organization, serving caregiving moms, is because they are isolated and lonely. And so I decided I will create a community where moms can just show up and be surrounded by other moms who get it, who understand them, who are in similar journeys.
I love this so much. And part of what you describe in the book, it's one of the first anecdotes, is you didn't even realize how isolated you were. Do you want to talk about kind of your early days a little bit?
So we were fortunate to get an early diagnosis when Ryan was 5 weeks. And I didn't have any friends with kids with disabilities in my immediate world. And I had sweet, caring people in my life, friends and family. But until we met other families who had kids with the same diagnosis as Ryan, we didn't realize how critical that was and how comforting and transformative it was to have other people who are in similar circumstances.
Mhm.
And so, I mean, we jumped into support groups, frankly, out of fear and shock and what are we going to do with this diagnosis? This is a crazy diagnosis. And so we immediately wanted to connect with other parents, and it was life-saving. And I say that connection community saved me. I'm sure it saved my marriage, because if Chris and I were out on an island trying to figure this out on our own, the stress would have been even more exponential than what it already was or is.
Can you talk about the importance of, because I have seen this too, finding people, not just finding people who have children who are experiencing difficulty, but in particular, maybe it's particular to this diagnosis, maybe it's not, but finding people who have a similar diagnosis as well.
Well, I think I can speak to both. I can say that I absolutely have to have moms in my life whose kids have the same diagnosis, because there are very unique aspects to PWS that other people aren't going to understand. And, there are features, the food seeking, that is just crazy. It's just nuts and crazy making. The anxiety and some of the behaviors and obsessiveness, we can all share together. We just so understand it. And we can laugh together, we can cry together, we can be exasperated together about the very specific parts of caregiving or parts that are challenging for our child and for us. And I also will say that I benefit from being around a community of moms where we all have very different stories and we have very different children, but the bond is the same. There's a common thread. There is an incredible compassion and fierce love and fierce advocacy and cyclical grief and stress that we all share, no matter what our child is diagnosed with.
One of the things I loved about the book is all of the different stories that are woven into there. And there's so everybody's situation is unique and everybody's situation is the same. And you just alluded to one of the things that's the same, which is this cyclical grief. Can you explain a little bit more about what you mean?
Sure. So when obviously grief, when you think of grief, you think of loss, you think of losing someone, a loved one. But when you are handed a diagnosis as a parent, when you're handed a diagnosis for your child, all of a sudden you've lost what you thought parenthood was going to look like. You've lost what you thought family life was going to look like. We all dream and scheme when we are trying to get pregnant, or we are pregnant, or we're adopting, or whatever the process is by which you gain the gift of children in your life. You're dreaming and scheming. And then when a diagnosis hits, especially a severe one, but really any diagnosis, you have to shift and you have to grieve what you thought your life was going to look like. You have to grieve what you thought motherhood was going to look like. And in the beginning, I say the grief is like walking through molasses. It's so thick, it's so heavy. And then eventually it's like walking through water. And the grief buttons continue to get pushed throughout the lifetime of your child, because you're going to see either your other kids, your nieces, nephews, your friends' kids achieving milestones or having experiences that maybe your child won't or can't have. It pushes the grief buttons. And I call it the wave of sadness and grief hits. And it's so normal. So that's something I talk about a lot, is just normalizing cyclical grief in the altered parenthood experience. It's very normal. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It just means that the buttons got pushed again.
Such a it's such a messy notion that we're going to continue to grieve over the lifespan of a child, and yet there it is, right? Like, and again, we can resist and it will still be there, or we cannot resist and it will still be there.
Right, right. And I also want to say that I don't want parents to feel guilty for grieving the life that they thought they would have.
Mm.
a lot of parents do feel guilty because they're grieving the child that is living before them, not a child that has passed. And what I say to that is, it's so understandable. You thought everything would look this way, and now it looks this way, and you're adjusting your expectations, you're adjusting your perspective, you're taking on a lot of new skills and resiliency and tenacity and grit. And it's okay. It's okay. You didn't do anything wrong by grieving.
Yeah. There's so little discussed about our expectations of our children before they arrive. And when you have a diagnosis, you're immediately confronted with all of these things. And it just strikes me as, it always strikes me as, and the reason this podcast is called the Complicated Kids Podcast is because we don't understand how complicated things are until something's not going well. And so, right, like we just assume we're going to like trip through life and it's going to be sort of fine. And for many people it is. And then until it's not. And then we're going to unpack this. And so I think the question I want to ask you next is about your sort of how you, so you have this diagnosis and you have these experiences. What's the catalyst for like, this has to be bigger?
Oh, I love that. So definitely in the beginning, I was like, why me? Why Ryan? Why our family? Why? And then at some point I said, okay, what now? And my hands were open to the universe, to God, source, whatever you want to call it. What am I supposed to make out of this? What can I create out of this? What good, what beauty can come out of this? Because this can't be in vain. I can't just be doing this really chronically hard journey as a mom for nothing. And so I was just very open to the answer to that question. And of course, as you know, it came.
And which came first, the book or the organization?
The organization. So We Are Brave Together was launched in 2017 with the intent to support caregiving moms. We are mom-centric, to preserve and protect their mental health. And so we started off by offering support groups and low-cost retreats. And along the way, we've added a podcast and some other offerings and services. And our latest offering is this book.
So good. When somebody comes, how do they find you? First of all, how do they know they are supposed to come get you?
Yes, please come join us. We have a chair waiting for you. Come to wearebravetogether.org, and there's a little pop-up form. Join our community. You can join us. Membership is free. We have a secret Facebook group. We definitely send out a newsletter a couple times a month. I promise we won't spam you with a lot of email. But our newsletters do show, and our website show everything that we're offering and everything that we are about.
And you're still doing retreats?
We are still doing retreats. So we have grown in our ability and our donations and our budget to go from 1 retreat to 9 per year, including one for all of our Connection Circle leaders. So Connection Circle leaders are our support group leaders. We have them all over the place in the United States. We did have one in Australia and New Zealand for a time, but those leaders served for a couple of years and have moved on. So we offer a retreat for our leaders once a year. And then we have locations all over the United States for our other retreats.
When you meet, when your members meet, is it in person or virtual?
Both. So we do believe in the magic of meeting in person. Certainly COVID and the pandemic forced us to offer virtual offerings. So we continue to do that. We have all member connection circles for anyone in We Are Brave Together to participate in. We have some connection circles that are virtual because they're topical. For example, moms who have kids with behavioral struggles. That is a virtual offering. A lot of our location-specific connection circles meet in person, and some will do a combination of virtual and in-person gatherings. All our retreats are also in person.
Okay. Do you have a favorite story in the book?
Oh my gosh, that is such a hard question for me. Um, I really, really, really can't choose just one because I love all these women and I love, love, love their stories. There's such heart and wisdom in every single one. But going back to your first questions and talking about mothers who are hidden,
Mm.
one of our writers, Claire McMurray, who's a beautiful writer, they all are beautiful writers. Uh, the title of her story is Behind the Windows, and she's talking about how her daughter is experiencing life behind the windows, watching other things going on, and it's a beautiful metaphor. And I think it's the same for moms. We are watching the world go by sometimes as we are isolated in appointments, caregiving, and being at home, because sometimes leaving home is just too difficult. So that story was very powerful.
If people want to get the book, how do they do that?
They just go to Amazon.com and look up Becoming Brave Together. We have a paperback and an ebook, and we would love for you to read it and leave us a review. That would be wonderful. You can leave us a review on Amazon or Goodreads.
Fantastic. And then give us the website one more time for the organization.
wearebravetogether.org.
Perfect. Jessica, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to share.